Good evening, everybody. Okay, here we go. Oh, technology. Take your time. There we go. Yes, all right. Hey, everybody. Good evening. I'm Josie Tamir Crossley, and super happy to be back with you all this evening for our regular Friday evening, 7 p.m. class, Somatic Tools for Deep Resilience. We are on tonight. So tonight we're going to be practicing something called resourcing. So I'm just each week trying to pull something out of the somatic practices, somatic therapy toolkit to support you. And so resourcing is a huge important part in somatic work, in trauma work, in personal growth through somatic work. And I would say it's like maybe 40% of the equation of somatic therapy. And so it's a super important piece. And I think just with everything that's happening in the world right now, living in these unknown times, I've been observing through my own direct experience and through speaking with friends and colleagues that just being in the midst of what's happening on our planet right now, it's really triggering all kinds of different types of trauma for people. For some people, it's ancestral trauma. People who have ancestors who lived through, Second World War, the Holocaust, potato famine, all kinds of different things that, all the way back to, having, Ice Age and, being hunted by saber-toothed tiger and these kind of things, right? So our ancestors have been through a lot. And in these kind of times, those past experiences, past fears, past, traumas, right, can really get triggered. And so we want to have tools to be able to work with this stuff. Also, our childhood trauma can get triggered, maybe not feeling safe enough, and all different experiences. We've all had different experience that we've grown up with. And so just when there's this sort of heightened level of uncertainty in the world, as there is right now, it's just such a great opportunity, really, for us to be able to work with our own experience and heal and gain more tools for working with stress, anxiety, and bringing ourselves back to center and grounding. And so, so I wanted to share this specific tool with you this evening. So resourcing is a way that we find our center, right? It's a way of grounding ourselves, or getting ourselves back into a feeling of connection, and having a more dynamic response to things, rather than a reaction. When we've been triggered into a trauma response, or sucked into the vortex of the daily news right now, it can be really important to know how to kind of pull ourselves out of, if we've triggered our brain into like a fear place, right? So tonight I'm going to invite you guys to find one specific personal resource, and we're going to work with embodying it together during the class. And then we're also going to work with fleshing out a list of resources that we can turn to on the daily when we're finding ourselves stuck or feeling triggered. So this is going to be something that you can take with you away from the class, throw it up on your fridge, or have it in your journal, or somewhere that you can access it. Because one of the things that happens when we get triggered is, even if we have a lot of resources in our toolkit already, even if we know what they are, right, in our in our mind, the tendency is that when we get triggered into the trauma, what we call the trauma vortex, or that fear place, right? When we get triggered, we tend to forget all of our resources, right? We forget the people that we can call who love us. We forget, all the things that bring us into connection just kind of disappear because they're just not accessible to that part of the primitive brain. The brainstem wants us to just focus on survival, right? So when we're in that fear place, the tendency is to just, kind of contract, shut down, have like a myopic view of like maybe the thinking brain is kind of spinning around one particular topic of like how we can survive or what might happen or what has happened in the past, or and so we don't have access to those same resources that we do when we're in our sort of normal baseline place, right? And so I think it's really, really helpful. I know it's been really, really helpful for a lot of my clients. This is one of the first things that I do with people often is we actually like make a list together of the things that bring us back, the things that ground us, the things that help us come into our center, right? So, and I guess I just want to name also, before we dive too far into this, that some of you, as we go into this, if you're in a harder place, it can actually be difficult to even think of like, oh, what are the things that make me feel better, that make me feel good, or even just that make me feel okay. It can be hard to access those, right? And so if that's the place that you're in right now, you can stay with us through the class, but if you find yourself getting frustrated or kind of like, I can't think of anything right now that's helpful for me, I want to invite you to go back to the first video in our Somatic Tools for Deep Resilience group. The first video that I made, we talk about basic orienting, and orienting is basically resourcing to the present moment. And the present moment is always available, right? And hopefully the present moment is safe enough, is okay enough that can get you resourced and get you back and get you grounded. And so if you're having trouble coming up with anything else, I really recommend going back. That's why I taught that practice first, because it is really foundational, because it's something that we can use anytime. So go back, check out the first video. All the videos are available in the group, and go back to that, and either now or afterwards. So okay, so we are going to dive in a little further now. So I want to just explain to you a little bit more about what, in the somatic language, what I mean by resources. Okay, so resources are things that help to regulate our nervous system. They bring us back into our window of tolerance when we get overwhelmed, when we get triggered, when we start to shut down, right? Or get like hyperactivated. So they bring us back into our window of tolerance, which is that place of just things being okay, right? Things being tolerable, out of overwhelm. So they ground us, right? They help us come back to our center. They help us to hold our own experience, right? So when we're overwhelmed, when we're outside of our window of tolerance, it's like we can't hold our own experience. We can't even hold it, right? We're beyond our capacity. And so resources help us to come back to ourselves, come home to ourselves, and be able to hold our own experience. Okay. So this funny thing about the mammalian brain, or particularly the human brain, is that the brain is actually wired to, or designed to, be more aware of what's wrong in our environment than what is good and what's beautiful and what's okay, right? So if there's like one thing that's wrong and there's like 100 things that are beautiful, our brain is actually wired to focus on the thing that's wrong. And the reason for that, it's a survival mechanism, right? So if there's like one thing that's dangerous, if you're like in a big garden of flowers, say, and there's like one tiger, you want your brain to focus on the tiger, right? To make sure that you can keep yourself safe from that. But it does end up being a little bit of a design flaw in a sense, in just like day-to-day life. And hi, Martin. Thank you. Good to see you here. So our brain is wired up that way. And so what many Indigenous people knew, and specifically I want to talk about the Haudenosaunee people, is that we actually have to do these practices that support us to focus on what is okay, what is good, what is beautiful, what we can be grateful for in our environment. Okay, so so the Haudenosaunee people specifically, they have something that's called the Thanksgiving Address, and it's also known as the words that come before all else. So before they met, they would meet in any kind of group to make any kind of decisions or resolve conflict or discuss things. They would always do this practice of speaking gratitude, speaking what they were grateful for. And the reason for this is because what happens when we do that is it gets our brains in a more resource place. So even if we're in a, stepping into talking about conflict, generally when there's conflict, our brain tends to be in a more alert, hypervigilant place, right? And so, but when we come into noticing what we're grateful for, it brings that other part of our brain online that can sort of expand out from that and find commonality with, other beings. We kind of come back into that connection and that oneness, right? Which is really important if we're needing to make decisions, if we're wanting to just feel good. Okay, so and we're not going to go specifically into a gratitude practice today, but I just wanted to name that because I think it's just interesting that many Indigenous cultures recognize that it, without necessarily understanding the science of it, but they recognized that was an issue with our human brain, is that we actually need to focus on gratitude. We need to make it a practice, right? Because it's not something that just happens otherwise. Okay, so yeah, how else do I want to talk about this? Okay, so I also wanted to mention that when stepping into doing trauma work, it's super important to have resourcing. And I think there's this whole idea, like I've had clients say to me, well, I don't want to like turn away from the pain, right? I want to I'm willing to go there, I'm willing to feel the pain and and I know that I need to do that in order to heal. And while that's totally true, we also need to be able to bring ourselves into a state of feeling okay, of feeling better, of feeling good, of feeling gratitude. And when we practice that, when we practice bringing ourselves from a place of challenge or pain or difficulty or stress into a place of relaxation, gratitude, or even just okayness, right? Neutral. We start to bring the pathways of the brain. We start to rewire the brain to be able to go from challenging thing into things are okay now, things are safe enough now, more quickly and more easily, right? It's like wearing up. It's like if you rode a bicycle through a field every day, you'd start to wear a track in the field, right? So maybe at first the field would be, if it's full of grass, you can imagine at first it would be like you'd be bumping along the grass, right? But eventually if you rode that same path every day, it gets easier, you can go faster, right? And so that's what we do when we practice resourcing, is we start to develop that neural pathway. We start to clear that neural pathway to wire up the brain to be able to go from challenging situation to feeling okay more quickly. So it's really, really valuable in that way as well. Okay, so yeah, just looking at my notes. Yeah, there's so much. This is such a vast part of somatic work, and so we're not going to go into all the different aspects of resourcing today, but I just want to give you guys a bite-sized piece that we can work with and that you can take with you and that we can play with today. So resources can be things like supportive people that you can reach out to, okay? People who help you to feel better. Maybe they're a great listener, or maybe they are somebody who speaks slowly and wisely and really considers their words. Maybe they're just somebody who is really connected within themselves, really resourced within themselves. So when you're around them, you just kind of feel more alive and more connected and you feel better, right? So, so it can be a person, right? It could be an animal, it could be, a pet, or Maybe birds. For me, a big resource is sitting out at my sit spot and listening to the birds, watching the birds at my bird feeder. So it could be something like that. It could be any kind of animal. It could be specific places in nature or in the world. Um, like trees, flowers, even just the sky, um, sunshine, rain, wind, anything like that that you really appreciate and love and helps you feel better. Um, yeah, it could be the ocean. Um, exactly. So, yeah. And a really important aspect of this is that it can be things. So it can be things that we can physically go and do and connect with, right? But it can also be um, something that we can imagine. So even if it is a real physical place or a real physical person, right, we can start to call on those places or those people or those things or those animals. We can call on them. We can kind of like summon them in our imagination and work with them that way. And so that's what we're going to practice doing today in our class. And so, yeah, if you don't have a pen on hand, I want to invite you to grab a pen and some paper. And I'm just going to give you guys a minute to do that before we go any further. So go and get yourself. It's nice to even have like some colored pens, can be great. But just an ordinary pen is great, and you can always sort of embellish it more fully later with color and pictures and whatever you want to do. Yeah. Okay. So, and if you're listening to the recording of this, you can always just pause it and then come back when you have what you need. Okay. So, you may already be starting to imagine some things or have some things come to mind that you might write down. But I want to invite you to, if you haven't, start to think about some things that support you to feel better, basically, when you're having a difficult time, or things that you just love to do, or people that are supportive, could be animals, and just start to write them down, start to brainstorm. It could be foods that you love, even, could be weather, could be, body care things, maybe brushing your hair or putting on like your face cream or body lotion or having a shower or a bath. So I just want to give you guys a couple minutes to brainstorm some ideas, maybe a place in nature. Could be an experience that you've had recently that felt really nourishing. And so just take a moment and brainstorm about that. And for those of you just joining us, we're just brainstorming things that help us feel good. Super simple. And making a list, writing them down. And I'm going to do it right along with you. And once you've got some things written on your list, if you feel complete, maybe say hi in the comments. Just let us know you're out there, and post a couple of things that you came up with to inspire other people. And even if you're listening to the recording later, if you can post in the comments what kind of things are resourcing for you, just a couple of examples. That'd be great. Love to hear from you. Mm, awesome, Martin. Yeah, cooking a beautiful, nourishing, nice, nourishing meal. Totally. Yeah, and dancing. Awesome. Yeah, that's one for me too. Mhm. Hey, Bridget. Hey, Kella. Aw, awesome. Love to hear from you, ladies. If you have a few resources you want to post that you're coming up with, I'm going to post some of mine as well here. Yes, Laura Lee, getting out in nature, totally. So yeah, and I'd invite you to maybe think of an experience that you've had in nature specifically, something recent or like a favorite place that you have, and just like flesh it out a little bit more. Like write down um, what are the like the elements of it. Is there moss? Is it like a specific tree in the shape of the tree? Is there water? Those kind of things. And not that you necessarily need to share that in the comments here, but just for yourself to really start to flesh it out a little bit more. Yeah, let yourself get creative here. Really let yourself drop into visualizing. And in a moment, we're gonna start to bring it into all of our senses. Okay, awesome. So I want to invite you guys to, I'm sure that some of you have probably enough more that you want to write down and add to your list. And I'd invite you to just keep this list going over the next few days. Put it somewhere where you'll remember about it and just keep adding to it when you think of other things to add. Um, oh, I just thought of one, baths, hot baths. Oh my God. Or getting into a sauna or any kind of warm place. So good. Sunshine. Um, yeah. So keep fleshing out your lists over the next few days. Um, and for now, I'm going to invite you to choose one thing, choose one experience or one place or one person. People are a little more tricky because they often, relationships are complicated and generally there could be like a little bit of a mixed resource. So be careful with that. But what you can do is if you want to use a person, really to imagine like a specific moment with them, right? A specific um, moment or a specific thing that you do regularly that is really nourishing, okay? Um, yeah. So just take a moment and really feel into one specific thing that you want to work with here tonight. Okay, and then I'm going to invite you to really visualize that experience in your mind's eye. So imagining, what are the colors? What are the textures? What are the shapes that you would be seeing? And then coming into the sense of smell. Okay, imagining, what would you be smelling in that experience? Would it be fresh air? Would it be the smell of something cooking? Would it be some essential oils? Or, what, just really imagining the smell of that experience. Would there be tastes involved? And just, if there's tastes, just imagining what it would taste like. It might be tasting the air, or tasting some chocolate, or and then coming into the sense of touch, and imagining, what would you be feeling on your skin? What would you be feeling in the body? And start to notice also, as you imagine, as you visualize yourself in this experience, really start to notice what happens in your body, right? Deeper inside the body. And just notice if anything changes. As you imagine being in this place, in this experience, seeing what you're seeing, smelling what you're smelling, tasting what you're tasting, feeling the air on your skin, or the water on your skin, or whatever it is. Just notice what happens in your body. Does your breath change? Is there, maybe just a little bit, even like 1% more relaxation coming in to your being? Are you able to kind of lean back a little bit more? Maybe let yourself feel more supported. So we start to bring this resource into the body. So through the imagination, through the senses, right into the body. And we track, right? We're tracking here. So we're noticing what happens in my body as I focus, make my focal point this experience, make my focal point in time this experience, right? This experience of being in this place that's nourishing for me. So, in a sense, we're allowing the nourishment of that experience to integrate even more deeply into our body through our conscious awareness. And we track what happens in the body. So just noticing that. Mm-hmm. Beautiful. So I want to invite you, before you kind of come back into present moment reality, I want to invite you to imagine when you might want to use this in your day-to-day life. Okay, so we're kind of want to make a little thread, thread or a little connector out into our day-to-day life, right? Moments where there might be, maybe there's a little small conflict in your house, or maybe you read the news and then you need to bring yourself back, right? So that's been such a huge practice for me this last month, is playing with reading the news, noticing what happens in my nervous system, and then resourcing, right? And so I want to invite you to start playing with that, right? Or maybe if you're not reading the news anymore, which I totally commend you, it's like probably not necessary at this point, right? Maybe a little every couple days. But yeah, just see where it might be valuable to bring this practice in. And we can do it in, we don't need to spend this much time with this practice, right? We can do it in, 30 seconds, 30-second pause, and bring in this, this memory, this experience. And it can support us to, to shift our nervous system, to bring ourselves back into center, back into grounded, right? And so play with it, see how it is for you. And I'd love to hear from you how that experience of embodying your resource was. Was it challenging? If it was challenging, what kind of challenges did you find? And yeah, just what did you experience? Did you notice a shift in your body? I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Definitely let me know. And if you have questions that have come up, let me know that. And yeah, take this, play with it. Take your list of resources and put it somewhere where you'll remember about it, and let yourself keep expanding it out. I think it's really valuable and fun to get out some colored markers or some paint and take it to the next level of make it beautiful, make it something that is in itself a resource. If you can come have something on your fridge or in your room or in your journal that you can open up and it's beautiful and nourishing in itself, right? So I invite you to take some time and do that. And yeah, just play with it. Let me know how it goes. And I'll see you all next week. Okay, my dears. Have a good night.